For more than a decade, Savannah Guthrie was the steady voice in the room, the one you trusted, the one who never seemed rattled, never seemed lost, never seemed like she was carrying anything heavier than the day's headlines. But behind those studio lights, behind that signature smile that somehow managed to feel both professional and deeply personal, there was a woman quietly carrying a weight that almost no one knew about, a health scare so serious it threatened to steal something she had spent her entire career building, a professional pressure so immense it would have broken most people years earlier, and a private emotional unraveling that she kept hidden, not out of weakness, but out of sheer, stubborn, extraordinary strength. At 54 years old, something shifted. The armor cracked, the tears came, and for the first time in her public life, Savannah Guthrie let people see what was underneath all of it, what she revealed, and more importantly, what she had been hiding, stunned even the people who thought they knew her best. This is not the Savannah Guthrie the world thought they knew. This is the real one. And her story is one of the most quietly powerful stories in American television history. Stay with us, because what comes next will change how you see her completely. There are certain people who seem almost impossibly built for what they do. Savannah Guthrie is one of those people. Since taking the anchor chair at NBC's Today Show in 2012, she became a fixture in American households. Every morning, before the coffee finished brewing, before the school run, before the alarm stopped ringing, Savannah was already there, present, grounded, alive. She moderated a presidential debate. She broke major political stories. She sat across from world leaders, grieving parents, artists, and athletes, and somehow brought the same genuine warmth to every single one of them. That is a rare gift. Most people in television learn to perform warmth. Savannah Guthrie seemed to actually possess it. But here is what the audience at home never fully understood. The woman they watched every morning was not arriving at that studio rested and unburdened. She was arriving after years of personal battles, quiet reinvention, and a health journey that threatened her ability to do the very job she loved most. Savannah Guthrie's life is a story about resilience, not the glossy, Instagram quote kind of resilience, but the real kind. The kind built from disappointment, delayed dreams, physical loss, and the slow, painful work of putting yourself back together when the world isn't watching. She grew up not knowing she would be famous. She spent years searching for her path. She nearly walked away from broadcasting altogether to pursue something entirely different. And when she finally arrived at the top turned out to carry its own kind of danger. At 54, Savannah stood at a crossroads that forced her to ask the hardest questions any person can ask. Who am I beyond this job? What have I sacrificed? What have I been pretending is fine when it wasn't? The answers were complicated. They were emotional. And they were more human than any interview she had ever conducted. This is her story. Savannah Guthrie was born on December 27, 1971, in Melbourne, Australia, a detail that surprises almost everyone, who assumes she is a product of American television from the very beginning. Her family moved back to the United States when she was still very young, eventually settling in Tucson, Arizona. It was a modest, grounded upbringing. Her father, Charles Guthrie, passed away when Savannah was just a teenager, a loss that cut deep and early, the kind of loss that reshapes a young person's entire understanding of time and impermanence. Losing a parent young does something to you that people who haven't experienced it struggle to describe. It puts a clock inside your chest that never stops ticking. It makes you both more determined and more quietly terrified than your peers. You learn very early that nothing is guaranteed, that tomorrow is not a promise. Savannah carried that truth with her everywhere she went. She threw herself into education. She attended the University of Arizona, where she studied journalism and graduated with honors. But what happened next is the part of her story that people rarely discuss, because it complicates the clean, linear success narrative that fame tends to create around people. She did not go straight into television. She went to law school, Georgetown University Law Center, one of the most prestigious legal programs in the country. She earned her degree. She passed the bar exam. She worked as a real attorney. For years, Savannah Guthrie existed in a professional world entirely separate from the one that would eventually make her a household name, and there were moments, quiet, private moments, when she genuinely did not know which version of her life was the right one. The law felt serious, important, respected, but it didn't feel like her. Something kept pulling in a different direction. Some part of her had never stopped dreaming about. Something else entirely, that tension between the life you have built and the life you believe you are meant for, is one of the most exhausting things a human being can carry. Savannah Guthrie carried it for years, but what happened next changed everything. The pivot into broadcasting didn't happen overnight. Savannah started in local television, learning the craft the hard way, early mornings, late nights, stories that didn't always get noticed, and the constant low-grade anxiety of being new in an industry that has no patience for uncertainty. She joined NBC News in 2007, initially as a correspondent and legal analyst. Her law background immediately set her apart. She didn't just read the news, she understood it on a structural level. She could translate complex legal and political situations into language that felt human and accessible without ever dumbing anything down. That combination of intellectual depth and natural warmth was rare. People inside the network noticed quickly. By 2011, she was embedded in White House press coverage. By 2012, she stepped into the Today Show anchor chair alongside Matt Lauer, and almost overnight, Savannah Guthrie became one of the most recognized faces in American broadcasting. The audience connected with her immediately. She had this quality that is almost impossible to manufacture. She felt like a real person, not a performance, not a carefully constructed television character. A person. She made the news feel approachable. She made hard conversations feel safe. She brought something to that studio that it genuinely needed, and the audience felt it every single morning. And she was doing all of it, while quietly managing a life off camera that was far more complicated than the morning light ever suggested. This moment felt triumphant from the outside, but few people knew what was already beginning to build beneath the surface. In 2017, the Today Show was rocked by one of the biggest scandals in its history. Matt Lauer, Savannah's co-anchor, her daily partner, someone she called a friend, was fired following serious allegations of sexual misconduct. The network announced it live, on air, with almost no warning given to the people sitting in that studio. Savannah had to deliver the news herself. Think about what that moment actually required of a person. To sit in front of millions of viewers, visibly shaken, and announce the termination of someone she had spent years working alongside. While the cameras rolled and the entire country watched her face for cracks, she didn't hide it. She said she was heartbroken. She said she was processing it in real time, just like everyone watching at home. That moment defined something essential about Savannah Guthrie's character. She didn't perform composure she didn't have. She didn't pretend the world wasn't shifting beneath her feet. She let people see that she was human, and somehow, that made her more trustworthy. Not less, but that wasn't the hardest thing she faced during those years. Around the same period, Savannah's vision began to change. A seemingly innocent accident. A toy arrow struck her eye during playtime with her children, caused serious damage to her retina. The injury threatened her eyesight in ways that were genuinely terrifying. There were surgeries. There was deep uncertainty. There was the very real possibility that her vision in one eye could be permanently and irreversibly compromised. And yet, she kept showing up to work. She kept anchoring. She kept smiling. The professional pressure during this time was immense. The personal fear was even greater. Losing your sight, even partially, is a particular kind of fear for someone whose entire career depends on reading, processing, and presenting information in real time, under bright lights, in front of millions. It isn't just a physical injury. It reaches into your identity. It makes you question everything you assumed was stable. Savannah fought through it with remarkable grace. But the fight left marks that don't always show on camera, but never fully disappear. In 2014, Savannah gave birth to her daughter Vale. 2 years later, her son Charlie arrived. She had these children in her 40s, later than many, and she has spoken about that choice with both deep gratitude and quiet emotional complexity. She had waited. She had prioritized her career during years when other doors might have been open. And there were moments, private, vulnerable moments, when she wondered if she had miscalculated, if she had given so much to the work that she had delayed something she wanted just as fiercely. The relief of becoming a mother, genuinely, completely becoming a mother, reshaped her in ways she has described as both profound and beautifully disorienting. Suddenly there were two small human beings who needed her to be more than a broadcaster. They needed her to be present, patient, available in ways the job had never required. Her husband, Mike Feldman, is a political consultant and strategist. By all accounts, their relationship is grounded in mutual respect and genuine partnership. But Savannah has been honest about the tension that never fully disappears. The guilt of the working mother, the mental calendar constantly negotiating between professional obligation and personal presence, the moments you miss that you can never retrieve. She once mentioned publicly that she pumped breast milk in her car between segments. It was a small detail, a passing line in an interview, but it landed hard because it was real. It stripped away every layer of the polished television image and showed the actual person underneath, scrambling, adapting, doing her absolute best with what she had. That is who Savannah Guthrie is. When the cameras go dark, someone giving everything, in every direction, all at once, and refusing to stop. Turning 50 changed something in Savannah. She has spoken about it carefully and honestly, in interviews that didn't make screaming headlines, but contained things genuinely worth sitting with. She talked about the way age recalibrates your relationship with fear. When you're young, fear is mostly about failure, about not reaching where you want to go. When you get older, the fear quietly shifts. It becomes about loss, about time moving faster than it should, about whether the life you spent decades building actually reflects the person you truly are inside. The eye injury never fully left her psychologically. Long after the surgeries, long after the immediate danger passed, it lingered as a reminder of how completely and suddenly things can change. How one ordinary afternoon, laughing with your kids on the living room floor, can fracture something you never imagined was fragile. And then there was the relentless, grinding pace of the job itself. The alarm before 4 a.m. every single morning for over a decade. The makeup chair while the rest of the city slept. The mental preparation required to sit across from grief, political fury, personal triumph, and national tragedy, sometimes all within the same hour, and remain the steady, calm, reassuring presence that millions of people were quietly depending on. That kind of sustained performance costs something. It costs something physical. It costs something emotional. And for years, Savannah paid that cost quietly, without complaint, without letting the audience see the invoice. By 53, 54, she began having conversations, first privately, then in more public ways, about what came next, about what was sustainable, about what she actually owed herself after years of pouring so much into an audience that loved her, but never fully knew her. It wasn't a dramatic collapse. It was something quieter, and in many ways far more significant. It was a reckoning. Here is what it was all building toward. The moments people began to notice, the unguarded pauses on air, the emotions surfacing in interviews, the occasional crack in the composure that Savannah had maintained for so long. Those weren't signs of weakness. They were the natural, inevitable result of a woman who had spent decades holding everything together, finally giving herself permission to exhale. Savannah Guthrie didn't break down because she was failing. She broke down because she was finally being honest. Honest about the eye injury and the psychological toll it took long after the physical healing was done. Honest about the grief she had carried since losing her father as a teenager. Grief that never fully resolves, only gets quieter with time. Honest about the impossible arithmetic of being a brilliant, driven, ambitious woman in one of the most demanding industries on earth, while also being the mother and partner she genuinely, deeply wanted to be. She let people see that she was tired, not defeated, not broken, tired. And there is a profound and important difference between those things. In letting people see that, she did something that almost no one at her level of fame is willing to do. She chose vulnerability not as a performance, not for sympathy, not as a career strategy, but because she had finally reached the point in her life where pretending otherwise felt like a betrayal of the woman she had worked so hard to become. At 54, Savannah Guthrie chose honesty over performance. That is the secret struggle no one ever fully knew about. Not one single catastrophic event, not a headline-worthy scandal or a public meltdown. Just years and years of quiet, relentless, invisible carrying, done with so much elegance and grace that the world simply never noticed the weight, until she finally set it down. We live in a world that rewards the appearance of strength. We celebrate the people who show up, who never crack, who perform composure so flawlessly that we forget entirely that they are human. And then someone like Savannah Guthrie reaches a point where she simply cannot maintain the performance any longer, and instead of losing our respect, she earns more of it than ever before. Because what she showed us isn't a flaw, it is the truth that even the most capable, accomplished, admired people carry invisible weight. That the warm morning smile you see on your television is sometimes the very last thing a person carefully assembled before walking out the door into a world that expected her to be fine. The truth that real strength was never the absence of breaking down. Real strength is what you choose to do afterward. Savannah Guthrie spent her entire career asking the hard questions. At 54, she finally turned that same honest, unflinching attention toward herself and what she found beneath the television persona, beneath the law degree, beneath the accolades and the impossible early mornings and the years of holding a studio together. Through every storm the world could throw at it was a woman worth knowing. Not just the anchor, not just the journalist, not just the mother, the wife, the retina surgery survivor, or the colleague who steadied an entire network when it fell apart around her. A woman who spent a lifetime becoming who she was and who, at 54, finally had the courage to say out loud that becoming is hard, that it costs something real, and that the cost, when you look back at everything it built, was worth every single quiet, invisible, uncelebrated moment of it. Her story isn't over, not even close, but this chapter, the real one, the honest one, may be the most important thing she has ever had the courage to broadcast. And she didn't even need a microphone.